have right now on the phone with me the man behind Ruthless Records. If you heard of N.W.A, Dr. Dre, or Ice Cube, this is the man that helped him get their start. Ladies and gentlemen, on the Time Machine, I have with me Jerry Heller. Jerry Heller, thank you for being on the Time Machine.
Hey, J-Mace, thanks a lot, man. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
It's no problem, man. Before we get into this interview, I understand you have a book out called Ruthless. Let's go ahead and tell the people why they should get Ruthless.
Well, I think that Ruthless is probably the best book that's ever been written about the music business. It's a lot of fun. I tell the real about everything and things that have never been addressed before, like the Ice Cube split up and the Dr. Dre split. It's fun to read. Plus, you can learn a lot about the music business from the point of view of someone that wants to get in the music business. Mm-hmm. So I recommend it to everybody. You can get it on Amazon.com, and it's Borders or Barnes & Noble, but it's a terrific book.
Right, it definitely is, because it took me a good while to read it. I wanted to get more in depth with this interview, and actually it was a great read. I learned a lot about the business, and like you said, it's definitely a great read for anybody that wants to get into the game. So to start this interview off, tell the people about how you get your start in the music business.
Well, I started off when I was a kid in the 60s, most people started off as agents, and I started off as an agent. And then I progressed to become a personal manager. Then, of course, I started the Ruthless label with Eazy-E in 1987. So I started off basically as an agent, and I discovered lots of rock and roll acts in the 60s and 70s. The Standells, the Guess Who, the Grassroots, Creedence Clearwater. I brought Elton John and Pink Floyd here in 69 and 70. And I represented Journey and Styx and R.E.O. Speedwagon and Marvin Gaye and Joan Armatrading and Four Tops and ELO and Crosby Nash. And the list goes on and on.
Kids, for those of y'all don't know who ELO is Electric Light Orchestra.
That's correct.
And I was reading in the paper in the book about you bringing Elton John over here, and basically there was like a big showcase. Can you tell the people about that showcase?
Well, it was at the Troubadour, which was a folk rock club that started groups like the Eagles and the Byrds in Los Angeles. And I secured an engagement for them here. He came over with just a trio, even though the album had synthesized strings on it. And I brought him over, and from the first night, it was evident to everybody that he was going to be a superstar. And everybody was in the audience, from Neil Diamond to Janis Joplin.
Wow. So it basically was a who's who of like 60s pop.
It was. Peter Asher, James Taylor, Kate Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, everybody was there.
Shouts out James Taylor, North Carolina very own, James Taylor. And you had managed Otis Redding during the Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah, I was his agent. A guy named Phil Walden out of Macon, Georgia, was his manager.
Okay.
And I worked very closely with Phil. And, of course, Otis came to Monterey and just blew the stage down. He was so incredible. And unfortunately, he died not long after that, before, right during Dock of the Bay, but before he was able to establish himself as a true superstar.
Now, when did you first come in contact with this thing called rap?
I heard about a little scene that was happening at a pressing plant called McCullough Records in 85, beginning of 86. And some of the groups that were pressing their records there were the Timex Social Club, Ice-T, MC Hammer, the World Class Wrecking Crew, the LA Dream Team, J.J. Fad, Rodney O and Joe Cooley, Egyptian Lover, Bobby Jimmy and the Critters. Those people were all pressing records over at McCullough. For $1,000, you got 500 pieces of vinyl with the artwork, and this guy would send the records out to his friends all over the country. And mysteriously, it was starting to build a groundswell in swap meets, and with the malls becoming the social center of our inner cities, and the advent of the car phone, where people could listen to what other people were listening to while they were talking to them on the phone, this music started to spread, even though they weren't getting regular, traditional AM and FM radio airplay.
Right. For the people that's not familiar with the West Coast lifestyle, can you break down what a swap meet is?
A swap meet is an outdoor sort of flea market where there's little booths and stands set up. Normally it's open on the weekends, and products are sold there for discount prices, and all the kids from South Central and the inner cities would go to a swap meet called the Rhodium. In the Rhodium, there was an Asian American named Steve Yano who had a stand with all this vinyl up on a pegboard, and then he would just blast it out over his loudspeaker system, and we were literally selling him records out of the trunks of our cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when did you link up with Eazy-E and form Ruthless?
Well, I was managing J.J. Fad and the L.A. Dream Team and Egyptian Lover and some of the other West Coast groups. And Alonzo Williams, who is really the West Coast godfather of rap, not gangster rap, told me about this guy named Eric Wright that wanted to meet me. And I sort of put him off for a couple of months because lots of people at that time wanted to get to have meetings with me. I would be doing nothing but having meetings to see who was going to go in business. So finally, after a couple of months, Eric Wright offered Alonzo $750 to meet me, and on March 3rd, 1987, we actually had the meeting on the street in front of McCullough Records in the old part of Hollywood on Santa Monica and Vine.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did all the members start to come on board? Dr. Dre, Ren, Yella, the basic lineup.
Okay, now remember now that on Crew Cut Records, which was the parent label of the World Class Wrecking Crew, there was also a group called CIA, Crew in Action, and Ice Cube and Sir Jinx were in that group. World Class Wrecking Crew, there was DJ Yella and Andre Romel Young, of course, who's Dr. Dre. And then one of the producers around town was a guy named the Arabian Prince who produced Supersonic by J.J. Fad. So we were already involved with all of the players. It was Eazy-E's brilliant vision which put them together to form N.W.A., which in the beginning I thought it meant No Whites Allowed. He just laughed when I said that. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know what the letters stood for.
Right. Now, what was that process like making the breakthrough album Straight Outta Compton?
Well, what we did was we felt that Dre was our ace in the hole as far as production was concerned, and we just gave him access to a studio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we cut Straight Outta Compton. Simultaneously, we were cutting Easy Does It. And I think that we cut Straight Outta Compton for $12,000 and Easy Does It for $8,000. So the economics were certainly the way they're supposed to be in the music business.
Mm-hmm. Now, break down the economic part of the biz for those that are not familiar with numbers when reading contracts.
Well, tell me, be a little more specific than that. That's sort of a wide question.
Like the standard music contract, like if you're a new artist breaking in, what would the standard number of points and cents per record be on the contract?
Okay. So, when you're making a record deal, some of these contracts are 125 to 150 pages long. Mm-hmm. And they're very complicated, and it doesn't need to be complicated. The only thing you need to know is, when I sell a record, how much money do I make? That's really the only important thing. And then the second important thing is, okay, now that we've decided that I make a certain amount, $250 or whatever per record, when do I get that money? So the important factors are, how much do I make and when do I get it? Mm-hmm. Now, in those days in the LA music scene, basically the record label, the little independent label, were splitting 50-50 with the artist. That is not a real good kind of deal. At Ruthless, we start paying artists somewhere between 12 and 20 points, and usually between 12 and 14 points, and points is percent of the retail or wholesale selling price of the record. Normally, that's what a new artist can expect.
Right.